Hey, aloha, and welcome to Stan the Energy Man here on ThinkTech Hawaii. Stan Osserman here, um, going on my sixth year of doing this show every week. So I've decided to do something a little special today. In honor of all the quote unquote fake news going on in the world, I've decided to have a contest today. And the contest, I'm going to read you the rules. The contest rules are if you can pick the fake news story from all my stories today, ThinkTech Hawaii and I will send you in cash double my annual salary from ThinkTech in my contract as a host. Um, and time is going to be of the essence. So as soon as you spot the fake story, make sure you use social media or Twitter or Facebook or whatever to get a hold of ThinkTech or call their studio number and say I got it and give them your name and a way of getting a hold of you, and you'll be the winner. So just keep looking out for that story. But before I get into the stories, I'd like to thank Andy Marsh, Mr. Andy Marsh for last week's show. We ran it a little bit early, so if you're used to tuning in at 3, we were actually did the show at 9 in the morning, so you probably have to catch it on YouTube. But I got a lot of great feedback on the show, so thanks to everyone who gave me some feedback, and thanks again to Andy Marsh for a great show. I love talking to that guy. He's really a very knowledgeable character in terms of businessman, entrepreneur, um, and high tech hydrogen wizard. He really knows his business. Um, I'd also like to, a couple weeks ago, I did a show on installing photovoltaic cells in your house. And when I usually, the next day, I sit down and watch the show to see if I made any mistakes. And every once in a while, I catch one. In that show, I actually made a major blooper. I meant to say 20 kilowatt hours, and I said 20,000 kilowatt hours. So if you go back to my the second show I did, I think in August, and you saw that. The only reason I didn't make a big deal out of it the next show was because I actually had the right 20 kilowatt hours in about 3 other places. So I'm thinking that most people would catch on that I screwed up. But I'm 66 years old plus, and I'm allowed so many senior moments by ThinkTech every quarter. So I'm not hitting my max yet, but I do try and be careful. At any rate, the stories this week come from a newsletter that I started getting about a month ago from the Ohio Fuel Cell Coalition, and they call it their weekly news feed. Most people probably aren't aware of this, but aside from Dayton, Ohio being the home of the Wright brothers, um, Dayton, Ohio is actually like the center of the universe for hydrogen research as it started many years ago in the US. And there are quite a few companies. The universities have quite a bit of curriculum that's all centered around hydrogen technology and hydrogen fuel cells. And when I worked for the state of Hawaii, the Air Force partners that I had were stationed in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is in Dayton, Ohio. So it doesn't surprise me that this Ohio Fuel Cells Coalition newsletter is from basically the heart of hydrogen fuel cell country for the United States. It's a great newsletter, and I'd like to share some of the stories with you. So first of all, believe it or not, the first story is about Plug Power. And my guest, Andy Marsh from last week, it says, Plug Power develops a 1 kilowatt ProGen fuel cell system for robotics and drone applications. And this story comes from the Globe Newswire. And it says, Latham, New York, 19 August 2020. Plug Power Incorporated, a leading provider of hydrogen engines and fueling solutions enabling e-mobility, today announced a new 1 kilowatt ProGen fuel cell system intended for small scale robotics, automatic, excuse me, that should be autonomous. It says automatic. It should be autonomous vehicles and unmanned aerial vehicles and other aerospace applications. The new ProGen system represents an expansion of the technology and product line acquired through a company through the company's June 2019 acquisition of a company called Energy Or, Energy, capital O-R, a Montreal-based fuel cell systems company with extensive experience in aerospace fuel cell system design and application. Plug Power's new fuel cell system combines a patented, lightweight, and rugged construction method with its proprietary air-cooled closed cathode technology, delivering several key advantages over market competitors. So, if you've heard me talk about this before, in transportation, it's all about weight. When it comes to space transportation, aviation especially, it's all about weight. And you cannot beat the energy density of hydrogen. So when you start to talk about anything in transportation and replacing traditional fuels with a new technology, you got to look at hydrogen, and that's one of the applications that Plug Power has jumped on. And this is funny because when we did the show last week, Andy Marsh told me he'd like to come on my show and do a half hour just on aviation. And I had no idea Plug Power was doing anything in aviation. He wouldn't tell me, and this article pops up right away. The first time I get this newsletter from the Ohio Fuel Cell Coalition. So I have actually told Andy we're gonna try and have him back on in October. So we're gonna schedule a date there. So look forward to that aviation show with Plug Power in October. The next story says fuel cells could help decarbonize data centers, and this story comes from Technology Decisions. It says Microsoft successfully trial using hydrogen fuel cells to power a row of servers. It suggests that the technology could be key to helping decarbonize energy-hungry data centers. According to energy market intelligence company Guidehouse Insights, Microsoft last month achieved a world first by using hydrogen fuel cells to power a row of data center servers for 48 consecutive hours. Now, I'm not going to question Guidehouse's research, but I know that hydrogen fuel cells have been used extensively in backup power for cell towers and also in data centers to make sure that those centers do not go down because they're so critical to big companies like Microsoft and big internet service providers. So fuel cells are a huge advantage because as long as you have hydrogen stored in tanks, those fuel cells can provide all of the power you need. And it also mentioned not just the power for the data equipment, but that equipment needs to be cooled. And a story later on here talks about some of that as well. But air conditioning for those huge servers is critical as well. The next story is hydrogen fuel cells deployed at one military hospital in response to COVID-19. I started reading this and couldn't figure out where the heck the thing was, and then I noticed a story from Africa Oil and Power. So apparently one of the countries in Africa, and I'm not sure which country it is, where the city of Pretoria is. I should know that, and I just don't have it on the top of my head. But they have a military hospital that's been stood up, a mobile military hospital stood up to address COVID-19 medical cases, and they're using 7 standalone fuel cells to provide all of the power for this medical field hospital. The project is a public-private partnership between the Defense Department, Public Works, and the Public Works Department, the Defense Department of this country, and local companies. Not familiar with this one. It's called Bambelli Energy, and then Hyplat, Hyplat, and international partners, including PowerCell from Sweden, Horizon Fuel Cell Technologies in Singapore, and Elim Own Corporation in the United States. Further contributions in the form of methanol and hydrogen fuel Fuel cell units were also received from the Air Products South Africa. Air Products is a international company, and Protea Chemicals and Sasol. So that's hydrogen working for you in the field where it does great work, helping us fight the COVID-19 over in the African continent. The next story is hydrogen buses. Microgrids share $22 million of Western Australia funding for renewable hydrogen. This story comes from Renew Economy. 9 projects will share $22 million in grant funding provided by Western Australia's state government in a major expansion of the state's renewable hydrogen production capacity. The funding provided under the McGowan government's Western Australia renewable hydrogen strategy will support Western Australia's first hydrogen vehicle refueling station, the expanded use of hydrogen for transportation in the resource sector, as well as providing money for crucial government reform work. Couple things. Number one, I was part of a Department of Energy conference 2 years ago, and the keynote speaker was the Australian science advisor for the federal government down there. And he announced that Australia is rolling out a huge hydrogen economy strategic plan. I've had several conversations with several university and companies down in Australia, and they are going full bore into not only producing hydrogen for domestic consumption, for transportation, and for grid stability, but also exporting hydrogen to companies like Japan in the form of ammonia, which is, I believe it's NH3, if I remember the chemistry right. So it's 1 nitrogen atom, 3 hydrogen atoms, and it comes out in liquid form, so it can be transported at ambient pressure, ambient temperature, but get you a lot of hydrogen on a container ship pretty safely. There's the safety protocols for ammonia are pretty standard, and it's a known way to ship things. So Australia is stepping out in a lot of ways in hydrogen, and so that's one country to really watch if you want to keep tabs on what's new with hydrogen. Let me see, we're probably coming up close to a break time. I'll do one more story and then we'll go to break. A new byproduct hydrogen fuel plant project was completed in South Korea. So it says that this is from Hydrogen Fuel News. It's the largest facility of its kind and the first to produce hydrogen from petrochemical manufacturing. The company, Hanwha Energy, has completed the construction of its byproduct hydrogen fuel cell power plant in Korea at the Daesan Industrial Complex in Seosan. The plant will manufacture the renewable energy fuel from petrochemical manufacturing byproducts. The new plant uses recycled hydrogen from petrochemical manufacturing, explaining the company's statement. The byproduct hydrogen fuel will be made from recycling substances produced during the manufacturing at the Hanwha Total petrochemical plant, which is located in the same industrial complex as that's that Daesan industrial complex. According to the company's data, it's a 50 megawatt, which is pretty substantial size power plant, and it has an annual 400,000 megawatt hour capacity. They said this is enough to power 160,000 homes in South Korea. I did the math for Hawaii, at least for a typical house, and I don't come up with 160,000. I come up with more like 50 or 60,000. But in Korea, a lot of the cooking and heating and stuff is done with natural gas, and so therefore maybe the actual per house use of hydrogen or electricity is much lower, and it could maybe come up to a total of 160,000 homes. So we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll come back with some more hydrogen news in about 60 seconds.
Aloha, I'm Krista Stadler, the host of Nonprofits Mean Business Too on ThinkTech Hawaii. Nonprofits Mean Business 2 investigates the operational challenges and costs related to managing nonprofit organizations, while encouraging our viewers to find a nonprofit organization that you're passionate about in our community. We are streamed live on ThinkTech Hawaii bi-weekly at 12 p.m. on Thursdays. Thank you so much for watching our show. We look forward to seeing you then. Mahalo.
Hey, welcome back to Stan the Energy Man, and we're in the midst of the Find the Fake News story on Stan Energy Man, and we're halfway through the bundle. So if you haven't heard it yet, keep your ears perked up and see if you can pick out which one of these stories is actually fake news. The next story is Toshiba Power and Heating using a hydrogen solution. The story is from PV Magazine, which is, I guess, a worldwide magazine. So Toshiba Energy Systems and Solutions Corporation, a unit of Japanese electronic giant Toshiba, has deployed a 3.5 kilowatt hydrogen fuel cell system at its, I'm going to get this wrong, but it's Chinoki Nami site in Fukushima Prefecture. And if you'll remember, Fukushima Prefecture is the place where they had the nuclear power plant during the earthquake and tsunami that caused so many problems. And due to that Fukushima power plant, much of Japan is divesting itself of nuclear power and looking to other alternative clean energy solutions. So this story is very, very pertinent to that part of Japan. Anyway, the system called H2RX will be used to power for power and heating, and is set to be in operations in October. The fuel cell will power lights and air conditioning for part of the facilities, and will also produce hot water and heat. Hydrogen is being supplied by the company's 10 megawatt Fukushima Hydrogen Energy Research Field, which is only 10 minutes away, 10-minute drive away. It says the hydrogen produced at that field will be filled into hydrogen bundles. I'm not sure, that's probably a translation thing out of Japanese. I'm not sure what hydrogen bundles are, but it's probably tube trailers, and transported to the facility that's going to be using the hydrogen fuel cells. Like I say, it's only a 10-minute drive between where the hydrogen is being produced and where it's being used. So all of these stories, by the way, if you go to the Ohio Fuel Cell Coalition's website, you can read the full story yourself. Let me see. Next story is Ulsan and Hyundai Rotem agree on hydrogen tram project. This one is a little cryptic because he used an acronym early on, but I figured out, because the story comes from International Railway Journal, that they're probably talking a light rail vehicle. So the Korean city of Ulsan and Hyundai Rotem have signed a memorandum of understanding to produce and test the country's first hydrogen-powered LRV, which I'm assuming is a light rail vehicle. The agreement was signed on August 13th at an event attended by Ulsan's mayor and the president, CEO rather, of Hyundai Rotem. Hyundai Rotem will be responsible for developing the low-floor rolling stock, infrastructure upgrades, and signaling systems, as well as the hydrogen charging stations and operation of the vehicles. The city of Ulsan will provide administrative support for the approval and test of the lines, and then also provide for the installation of the charging stations. The next story comes out of UK, and it says Jaguar Land Rover are betting on hydrogen for big SUVs. This comes from Motoring magazine, I assume. Jaguar Land Rover has begun developing a new hydrogen fuel cell technology for its flagship limousines and SUVs. The special research project working under the Project Zeus banner has been given a deadline to introduce the first fuel cell hydrogen powered vehicles by around 2025. This is reported in Autocar magazine. The first vehicles likely to receive the zero emission technology are rumored to be the all-new third generation Range Rover Evoque. Hydrogen fuel cells will then be rolled out in larger vehicles that could include both the Jaguar XJ limousine and the flagship full-size Land Rover. The next story is new hydrogen-powered racing series called Hi-Raz League to launch in 2023. And that's HYRAZE, all caps. And this is from Autosport magazine. An all-new environmentally friendly hydrogen-powered racing series has been unveiled and have a projected launch date in 2023, featuring zero emission cars and a revolutionary braking system. The Hi-Raz League will use environmentally produced hydrogen fuel cells, hydrogen as fuel for its 800 brake horsepower fleet of cars, using 2 hydrogen fuel cells to power 4 electric motors. This will ensure that the cars racing in this series will be able to complete overall race distances without having to save energy, a limitation of battery-powered categories such as Formula E race cars. I'm not big into car racing, but I do know that they have electric car racing like categories or specialties. And one of the problems is that when you have batteries and you're working really high horsepowers and big motors, your battery life is limited because you can only carry so much weight in these cars. So they have to literally hold back on the power they produce to make sure that they have power to make it all the way through the race. And that's part of the challenge in these cars. But with the hydrogen fuel cell cars, you're going to be able to go much farther and probably won't have to be quite as critical on the energy management. You'll be able to do more all-out racing with these 800 horsepower vehicles. So that story is from the Autosport magazine. Next story comes to us from the Wall Street Daily. In an apparent effort to dispel stories that President Trump is not concerned with environmental issues, like the existential threat of climate change, he's prepared to immediately stop the United States Postal Service from driving the highly inefficient right-hand drive postal delivery vehicles that are pretty much ubiquitous and currently in service around the United States. They're going to begin converting those vehicles to run on hydrogen electric drivetrains immediately. Our ThinkTech science advisor, Dr. Carl Sagan, states that this move will reduce United States Postal Service's carbon footprint by billions and billions of tons of CO2 annually. The plan involves taking the vehicles out of service immediately and replacing them with electric three-wheeled bicycles made in the USA by a yet unnamed manufacturer and creating 1 million new high-paying jobs in the e-bike manufacturing sector. This will help with the recovery from the Wuhan virus pandemic that has been exacerbated by shutdowns and lockdowns across our nation. In a related story, the Postal Workers Union is rumored to be considering switching its endorsement of Joe Biden for president to President Trump when the RNC indicates the RNC indicates that this is in planning because of planning on adding 500,000 new postal carriers in the next 2 weeks to ensure that the success of the mail-in ballot initiative goes on unhindered. So that's your news, hydrogen news from around the world today with Stan the Energy Man. And don't forget to call in immediately or text in or whatever to the station to figure if you can, if you've nailed that one and got the right answer, so you can get the big cash prize I've talked about. So in closing, I want to show a quick video, if we can, on hydrogen in microgrids.
There are over 300 million people in our country, and the vast majority rely on large-scale, centralized power grids for their energy. But the infrastructure is aging, and it is vulnerable. Natural disasters, cyber attacks, and other threats can leave large swaths of the country without power. Fortunately, there is an alternative. A renewable energy microgrid represents a different path for the future. Renewable microgrids generate power from sources like solar, wind, hydrogen, waste-to-energy, and geothermal. That power can be stored within the localized system using technologies such as advanced batteries, hydrogen, flywheels, pumped hydro, and others. These microgrids can provide reliable and efficient energy transmission, especially to critical facilities like hospitals, airports, and military bases. Unlike our current large-scale systems, microgrids eliminate single points of failure and are therefore more resilient to disasters, threats, and power outages. Our current energy infrastructure loses a lot of money. Grid outages cost up to $33 billion annually. They are expensive to build, expand, and maintain. And they're inefficient, losing more than half of the initial energy to factors such as line loss, spending reserves, and theft. Microgrids solve these issues and greatly reduce transmission loss and maximize efficiency. They also reduce carbon emissions and eliminate imported fuel costs, keeping money within our local economy, and even create new local industries and jobs based on clean, renewable energy. Our energy grid was built over 100 years ago, when energy needs were simple. With the increased complexities of energy demands, power sources, and transportation, now our old grids struggle to keep up. We require new ways to generate, store, and deliver energy. Renewable energy microgrids are a potential long-term solution that will provide safe, clean, reliable, and efficient energy for generations to come.
So in case you haven't figured it out, we're all bullish on hydrogen here at Stan the Energy Man. If you don't believe it, trust me, within the next 15 years, most of the people you know will either own or have driven a hydrogen fuel cell car. Mark my words, it is the answer. This isn't hypothetical. This isn't wishful thinking. It's based on pure physics and pure science. Don't question science. It's not healthy. But a theory isn't science. So just because somebody has a theory doesn't mean it's true. But I guarantee you, you'll be using hydrogen before you know it. So until next Tuesday, this is Stan the Energy Man signing off. And I might even show you my dog next time because she's here on every show, quietly laying next to me. And I think she deserves some airtime for being such a good puppy. Till next Tuesday, Stan the Energy Man signing off. Aloha.